but I'm going to introduce Bob. Bob and I are friends now. I met Bob recently. Bob is a 4-year resident of the lake. He's a retired sergeant with the St. Louis County Police Department. He owns Larry's on the Lake and Heroes, and we've become friends through BNI and through his new project, Lanai, the Lake Area Needs Initiative. So this is Bob Robinson.
So thank you. And I have to introduce Ed Thomas, because Ed Thomas is also new to the lake, and he is the executive director of the Camden County
Developmental Disability Resources, otherwise known as Senate Bill 40 Board.
That's what I was getting at. So I'm a board member of the Senate Bill 40 Board. So one of my activities was to get involved in the community. And I'm going to throw out a couple things to you real quick. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Chief, you're from Iowa. Now you're the chief down here. Welcome. And in fighting crime scenes and in fighting crime, we look for 3 things, and we taught through Neighborhood Watch and how to find different people. We found the connector, the guy that connected everyone. We found the communicator, the person that could get the message out. But we also had the person of wisdom, or the maven, the person that knew the makeup of the community. And when you look at the lake, you are those folks. I don't know who you know, but I know who's in my room. I know who's in this room. People that are the leaders of the lake. People that are the movers and the shakers and the doers. Well, as I stand up here, Ed and I are also in that caliber. We are the movers and the shakers. We just don't know who you know to get our message out. As I became on the Senate Bill 40 board, one of the first projects we work on, we had to capture funds for an individual that lived in a hospital bed. And he needed a new hospital bed. And the hospital bed was $13,000. And it took, how long, Ed?
They had been working on the project when I got here 2 years prior, trying to get this bed funded.
So this young man lives in a bed, and for 2 years we struggled to find the funding for this hospital bed here in America. So, and Ed and I, as we become closer, even though there's a table between us, there's really not. How do these things happen? And how do we allow these things to happen? Because folks, they're not educated. They don't know. So when you start looking at the lake down here, in the St. Louis area, we refer to it as the circles of a failed community. The circles of a failed community. Not that we're failing, but we fail on communicating. We fail greatly on sharing resources, getting things done. So what I always looked at Ed, I said, Ed, how did that happen? How can, in our society today, with all the resources that we have, it takes 2 years to get a hospital bed for someone who lives in a hospital bed. We're not even talking about his housing yet. We're getting to that shortly. How does it happen? We need to start looking at the way we look at things and change our attitudes and change, well, that's the way we've always done it. Because there are other ways, and we're going to show you and talk about other ways today. We call them silos. When I say the circles of a failed community, if you can hold up your tea glass for a minute. Just everybody hold up your tea glass, if you have one, okay? These are silos. This is the Citizens Against Domestic Violence. This is the Salvation Army. This is Habitat for Humanity. This is the Helping Hands Homeless Shelter. This is whatever church you go to, and whatever church you go to, and whatever church you go to, and whatever church you go to. And then the school districts, and then the police departments, and the other police department over here. And then the banker. All these silos are what makes up our community. But in the nonprofit world, a lot of times, because they're so overwhelmed, the caseload is just exponential on how many cases that are out there, that it becomes overwhelming. And silos don't communicate. Well, one thing that they're doing is they are all fighting for the same dollars. Well, I don't want to partner up with the CADV because we need that money to help our organization. We've got to pay our executive director. We've got to keep our mission rolling. We've got to build so many houses in our Habitat for Humanity venue versus the other county. So we're all fighting for the same dollars. So what happens, sometimes things don't get done because there's not a communication. So what Ed and I, in February of this year, we sat down and we said we're going to make a difference. We're going to create something new. We've created the Lake Area Needs Initiative Working Group. We meet every Tuesday at Heroes. And what we're doing is we're bringing in these silos, inviting them to come in, and now we're partnering them with folks in the business community. Now, Chief, I worked in the government system. Try to create change in the government system is like trying to go through that wall, okay? And when you get through that wall, there's another wall just like it. But as a business person, I don't have those barriers. And then Lanai, we don't have those boundaries. We don't have political boundaries. We don't have to say no to anything. So we're establishing a caseload of needs here at the lake. So we then go to the CADV or to the Helping Hands Homeless Shelter and say, what do you need or what are your obstacles? And we bring them to a meeting and we talk about those needs. We talk about how that we can successfully change the face of our community. I want to let you jump in there, Ed, on the nonprofit side of it. Or
The nonprofits, you know, they do wonderful things, and they do wonderful things for these specific groups. And in Bob and I talking quite often, just like with the situation with the bed, sometimes the answer is right there in front of you. The very one thing that nobody decided to look at on that bed was the fact that we could do it. And we did. And that's the same thing that happens with your neighbors in the silo world. They have an issue brought to their table. They know nothing about what you do. Or they have a little bit of an idea, but they're not part of your world. What happens? Well, if you got somebody that comes to you that needs help, and you're not really sure what your neighbor does, what do? You have to turn them away. You don't know where to send them. Well, that's where Lake Area Needs Initiative came in. Wow, wouldn't it be great if we could just bring all these people to the table non-competitively? We're not competing against them for dollars. And we can bridge these organizations together. Because if I know what you do, I now know you. I now know. And you just became an invaluable resource, whether you know it or not. Because what happens when people get stuck in their silo, they don't see past those walls around that cup. They're concentrating on what they are supposed to be doing with that silo. And when they get caught up in that cup, you just start swirling around, and you forget everything else around you. And how wonderful is it when there's strength in numbers? If I communicate with 5 organizations, and I'll give you an example here in just a second. If I communicate with 5 different organizations, all of them do great things. They're getting a lot done within their silo. How much could they accomplish if they worked together? A lot more. And I'll give you a good example. Just last week we had a need came to the table at Heroes. And the only way we were able to solve that need is by communicating with other organizations. Here's how it worked. Camden County Developmental Disabilities comes to the table at Lake Area Needs Initiative. So does CADV from time to time. They get email outbursts on everything that goes on within the Lake Area Needs Initiative world. CADV gets a person to come in because they're a victim of domestic violence. They are now able to house them. But there is needs within that family. What happens? The needs come out to our table. Wow, there's a child in that household that was removed from that household that came in to live in this CADV facility with the mom that needs a breathing machine. She has severe medical complications. Well, guess what? Also has a developmental disability. Ding, bang, within 2 days. Within 2 days, folks, 48 hours, we have that individual set up with needs that are met for that child.